like I really don't belong. I can't explain it. When I close my eyes, I see a strange reality. Am I dreaming, or on the edge of remembering? You wake up feeling like you really don't belong. You can't explain it, that when you close your eyes you see familiarity. Are you dreaming, or on the edge of remembering?
Okay, darlings, we're back. It is Sunday. It is Father's Day. And my father has already moved on. But I have a stepfather. I have sent him digital greetings and phone text greetings. And later may actually speak with him. I also asked my sister-in-law to get pictures of him today if she is going to be visiting daddy-in-law. So that is a fine thread. I must have an emergency repair. Okay, I decided to be silly, and I got these cool buttons, and I want to affix one just for the fun of it. Now, when I originally bought them, first of all, they had to come in 6s, because that's how the woman makes them, and understandable. So I didn't mind buying 6 just to get one, but it turned out I was wrong about them. I can't use buttons that are flat like that. I need ones with shanks if I'm going to use them for the intended purpose, which is to close my little purses. So it didn't work out, but the artist who made them is such a lovely person. She could use the photographic evidence of me being happily using her product. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I have to remember, I now have something to help me thread things. And since I so rarely actually do this, I forgot. And my friends and neighbors just gave me half a dozen needle threaders. Now this is felt, and doing a knot is useless unless it's huge. It will pull right through. So we're going to have to fix it first. And this is 2 threads in one. Got another bit together. So we have a beautiful day today in Connecticut. At least it feels beautiful because my air conditioner has been on all night. And boy, am I grateful for it. Now, if this was going to be a button that's used, and weight is put on it, tugging, I would make a greater effort to affix this, but it's not necessary because it's an art piece. It will not get abused until down. A little bit tighter. Guess I'm going to have to go around one more time. And here we go. Okay. So we have to use it a couple times. Okay. Good and tight now. One little knot over here. Felix. Okay. Of course, it's the wrong angle. I could get extra playful. I do have these buttons a little sheep. And if I had a bunch of them, it would be fun, I think, to kind of make them over, jumping over the moon. Although I guess it's a cow jumped over the moon. Fairy tales, they're children's things. I don't know. What are they called? I forget. Okay, but I have not forgotten this fresh cup of tea right next to me. And I'm going to borrow my phone to take a picture of this for that young lady from Etsy. I'll probably send that to her later. But if I don't do it now while I'm thinking about it, in one brain out there, then. So this is Sunday morning. Traditionally, it used to be our busy day, but it's not anymore now. We're in the afternoon. So it's after lunchtime. Now, some of you may be celebrating Daddy Day. Some with sorrow, some with gratitude. My father and I had a tumultuous relationship, but very loving. And he could be a tough guy, but I knew he really loved me. And the problem was that we were both very stubborn. You know what happens when stubborn people lock horns. But my father came back 16 years after he crossed to tell me that we don't really die. And not to be all, into the illusion. Now, his visit lasted 45 minutes. It was so intense and loving. A love like I can't even describe, other than completely filling you. So intense. I made appointments with doctors the next day. Like, we need to check me out. I just had the most bizarre experience of my entire life. I need to make sure I'm not losing my mind. They concluded that I was all right. I didn't even have a cold. This is wet again. So I dried these pieces of felting. These were our pre-felts from yesterday. Pre-felt meaning I'm not using it as it is. I'm going to be cutting it up and making things from it. Or cutting it up and adding it into things like this, where it is white. The clouds were a pre-felt cut from a sheet that I made like that. So these I made because I want to try making little flowers, like rolling them up, but also cutting out little circles into petals similar to this, only I want to be around an inch to an inch and a half in diameter, because I'm getting some stick pins, and the stick pins have little round plates on them, and they're about this big. So I figured, let's just cover the plate. Not really sure what I'm going to use to make it stick. Probably a hot glue blob, but I'm not positive yet. I may end up using a double-sided nanotape because it's transparent and it has really good sticking power. And it can be replaced if somebody yanks a felt flower from that sticky. You can roll the sticky off and put fresh sticky down. So it's I could do that because then you wouldn't ruin this if you needed to recycle it to something else. Now, I got the idea for doing stick pins while I was making this one, but this thing is huge, and I cannot imagine a little person like me wearing too much huge stuff. Then again, I could be wrong, and I could become a vogue. I really don't know. I'm not really into the fashion world that much, except for Iris Van Helpern. I think that's it. Hepburn? Anyway, Iris. If you say Iris, a Dutch artist who specializes in using things in fashion, you have to see her shows. They're recorded. They're just amazing works of art, beautiful studies of motion, and the natural world is her inspiration. So I love her work. Okay, let's move our little thing away now so I can set up for more icky work. Well, I guess this is actually not that bad. Okay, we do need one that can absorb a lot, because I'm going to start making this squashy lamp a little bit more stable with this stuff. So I went to the store looking for Aleene's fabric draping fluid, and could not find it. I next need to try Michael's. I went to Walmart because they advertise it on their website, but they don't have it unless you order it online, I guess, or some kind of exceptional Walmart. I don't know. In any case, I couldn't get it. And so this is, I guess, next to the crispest. I have to find the one that's all the way crisp. But it does work very well. I've done a couple of lanterns with it. And the cool thing about it is it kind of retains its softness. At the same time, it's got its shape right definitely there. And the first thing I like to make sure we cover is the bottom. It takes the longest to dry. If I can't lift it up a bit like that, I don't want it against the glass. But this is the vase I molded it on. This was a dollar store vase, which, by the way, now makes it $1.75 because of tariffs. In any case, I like it. I'm getting multiple uses of it. Haven't used it as an actual vase yet. Okay, so I just created a puddle up here, and that puddle has to be worked into the felt. You do not want anything sitting on top because that will just dry and become flaky and ugly, like a case of dandruff. But this, as you work the excess into the fabric on the side, now this morning I watched a video on robots and how fast they're producing them, because they produce them to produce each other, and they're putting out a robot, and forget where, but like there's one every 15 minutes, and there's massive lines of them. Now these are meant to take over workplace jobs in the automotive industry, especially building things, warehouse robots. Why? Because they can work 3 shifts without a break. They don't get sick leave. So what to do as a human? Now, the amounts of billions and billions of monies that are being put into this all over the globe. It's not just one country. It's obvious that robots are going to be a thing. Their big problem is power for those robots. It's easy to see why people would get very matrixed out. But I'd like humans to be more creative than that. Now, the billionaires and trillionaires, who there's about 20 of them who are determined to govern the entire planet, controlling the world's food supply and healthcare and everything else. So, and especially the prisons, they got to be able to lock you up if you don't cooperate. They have plans for the poor who are going to be out of jobs, and that is basically the jobs that robots can't do, like picking strawberries. Oh, they'll keep working on it. But the problem is that those robots can't be autonomous. They have to have a human behind them to observe. You know, basically an extension of their eyes. Now, on one hand, this is wonderful because nobody wants to be working in strawberry fields, let's face it. It is a rough job. Any farming work is hard. But the farmers have gotten themselves into major binds with their very, very, very expensive computerized big farm machinery. Now, one can say, on the one hand, we need to do this to feed the world, but the people aren't using these things to feed the world. They're using them to control the world. All famines are political. So really what we're battling are politics and the very, very rich dictating. So if you can't go ahead and escape, you know, the lack of jobs due to robots. Remember, on one hand, we used to think that this would be a golden age. Politics aside, one of the goals was to alleviate mankind of the worst jobs, so that it's not that a job is demeaning, but unhealthy. It takes so much of your physical energy to bring in a crop, to plant a crop. And that's just if you were feeding your own little family. If you're trying to do it on a massive scale, which other problems arise. Now, we were doing a decent job and people got rewarded financially properly. That's changed, of course. Now, we know who's getting rich and who's getting poor. But all of these arguments about how to fix that still leave us sitting in our desks at home. And, well, what can I do with my life? What can I do to be relevant to my own world? Everybody has to answer those kinds of questions for themselves, of course. What is meaningful to me may have no appeal to you. I love making art, but I also love educating people about a variety of subjects. Limited to what I've been able to absorb over my lifetime, of course, but I share what I learn. I don't want to see humans intimidated by the tools that those with way more power than us to dictate these things or how we use them. I don't want you to be intimidated. You don't have to support them. You don't have to buy their products made without human intervention. It's like we don't have to use AI. In fact, AI is losing money. That's why they needed they tried a military contract, because the only way they can survive. When people have to pay for their searches, they're going to stop searching that way. That's just simple economics. Now, there will always be the lazy kid who wants to cheat on his exams and have something else, you know, like buying your thesis instead of learning to write. And it's wonderful that we have tools that can help us do a better job when it counts. But nothing is going to replace character, what you do with your time and money. Now, one of the things I love about felting, it's very empowering actually. Being able to do something like this with natural fibers that can be gotten in most locales, because if for nothing else, we have a lot of farms because people want meats. People want things that last, warm mittens and all that. Well, felting, you learn it this, really, it's a simple craft. It kind of frees you from fast fashion. You realize that, like me, I'm a complete dolt when it comes to sewing or making patterns. But this just appealed to me one day, and like I say, when I looked at this, my mind exploded. It's like, I have to try that. And if people start looking at what they can do with their hands, start asking what they can do with their hands, what can they do to make things for themselves instead of having to make somebody else who's already very wealthy get even wealthier at the same time they are adding to serious pollution of water and soil and air. I mean, there's things that we can do to improve our world simply by making better choices about our own individual lives. I'm not going to get, and I'm not even going to try to get a whole world felting or knitting or crocheting, but these are crafts, learning to recognize what you can work with. In fact, my story, my third book, is concerning the magic carpet that was theoretically made in Persia, very ancient Persia. But its durability turns out to be because of the fibers used. And that's where I'm able to introduce a couple of interesting factoids about what we do here on this planet. Like the existence and the gathering of sea silk, which I haven't met one single person yet who knew what sea silk was. So I'm saying this has been around for thousands of years, but not a whole lot of people really know what it is. Now, that's one thing I'm not going to be able to work with, sea silk, but I am working with it in my book. So we have the power to make things ourselves, and there are ways that we can express ourselves artistically and creatively. At the same time, we are making something of value, I mean, sincere value, that if I make a beautiful felt vest or jacket, it's not going to end up in a landfill overnight. That's the kind of thing that preserves well. It's the kind of thing that you can hand down. When a lot of us were little, for better or worse, we got what our grandparents made for us. I had an aunt who made me 3 jumpsuits one summer when I was 16, or going on 16. And she did not know me at all when she chose the fabrics for those jumpsuits. And oh my God, I had to wear them. You know, when you need clothes and someone makes them for you specifically, there's not an option available when you're a young person. You wear it whether you like it or not. And one of the things, you see, that day I was assumed to be your average 16-year-old, and I was not, you know, like into the Beatles and fan clubs and things like that. That was not my way. And bright colors, oof, did not like bright colors. Bright colors were so like for kids. So when I got this jumpsuit full of psychedelic colors, I mean neon green and pink and yellow and black, and I was horrified that I was going to have to wear that in public. Now, there was nothing wrong with it. Don't get me wrong. It was my distaste of those bright neon colors. Aside from that, it was a lovely little pantsuit or jumpsuit, whatever. Well, I guess not pantsuit, jumpsuit, one-piece thing you put on. And she used the same pattern to make 3 jumpsuits. Every one was a different size. The thing was, I did like 1 out of 3, pattern-wise and all that. If you're in charge and you can make your own stuff, it's just way cooler. And when you understand what it goes into it, you start to have respect for people who do it for a living. Suddenly the stuff that you see coming out of, well, like Temu, sorry Temu, but most of those things that I've gotten from Temu, also, like, they're all using the same pattern, but they still come here in different sizes, all marked down, but all different sizes. I have gotten 3 blouses where the sleeves were mismeasured, and the distance from the collar to the end was 1.5 inches different from one side to the other. Another one, I think they were just trying to sell them as kind of lopsided styles, as if that was the in style, because so many of them were screwed up. Like, they did 2 halves of a shirt and they mismatched them. It was like, just because it's all white with a similar pattern doesn't mean it works, you know. It's like, and of course it never looks like the pictures. So I don't know why they bother producing that stuff anyway, because they end up having to give you back the profit margin. I've gotten the, well, you can keep it a few times, but every time it's like, well, what am I going to do with it other than give it away? I can't wear it. There's nothing redeeming about it. When you start sewing, you recognize the difference between a well-done hem or a well-done seam versus, you know, one run up with a machine and it's like done. It's like, this is going to fall apart in the first wash. And if you make it, you make sure it's going to hang on for a long time. So having some pride in the things that you can do, well, that's something you develop by doing. But if we don't ask ourselves, what can we do? If all we're going to do is sit around playing video games, I play every morning and night. I love my games. But if that's all we do, we're wasting our time. And it also leaves us slaves to the capitalist system of buy it now, regret it later when you try to find a place to dispose of it. Or buy it now and it only lasts through 2 washings. We need to start to evaluate a little bit more seriously what we're spending our money on in the first place. Everybody who cooks from scratch knows it's way cheaper to cook from scratch. Your budget is going to go quite a way if you're cooking from scratch. It means you're using, well, plain, pure ingredients. And even if you use like canned beans that have sodium in it and exposed to whatever pesticides or whatever, you still rinse those beans and it's still going to be a good value, versus buying a can of bean dip, a jar of bean dip. It's like, this bean dip cost me $5, but I could have just bought a can of beans and added in some my own veg for fractions of $1 and make twice that amount of bean dip for less than half the price. And you learn what you can make with your good stuff. You don't have to keep these corporations going. Every time you buy something, and I'm not chastising, all right? You have to make the decisions for yourself. You've got to acknowledge what you're doing to your bodies or the environment. But if you're unaware, you know, then you're making ignorant choices. Ignorant meaning without the knowledge. I noticed when I stopped buying pre-made foods. When I first moved in here, I was exhausted from moving, and I was just exhausted emotionally. I needed some recuperation time. But what I did wrong, but at the same time it was to keep me together without being exhausted, was instead of investing in my food, I was buying frozen dinners and lunches. And I was like, all right, I got a week's worth of frozen stuff. I know I'm going to eat no matter how tired I am. I got a bunch of canned soups. And then I started looking at the prices, what was in them. Now, I've always known a lot of the stuff, like I only buy this one brand of soup versus a bunch of the popular ones that are cheaper, but also really bad for you. It took a long time to get it through my head that just because something is allowed to be sold doesn't mean you should eat it or wear it or put it anywhere near your body. We have a lot of stuff like that. But nobody knows because they go, oh, well, they wouldn't sell it if it was bad for you. It's like they sell you stuff bad for you every single day. You just don't know what it is. And then I see people online overreacting to things like baking powder. They read the side of a cake mix box. Now, what you're seeing on the side of your food box is still the remnants of what people cared about was their food, and they insisted that people be transparent. And they have to list every single thing. Well, that includes, like, they just broke down everything. So your flour, how that breaks down. You got the whole breakdown of your enriched flour. What's it enriched with? Then you've got the baking soda. Well, you need baking soda or baking powder rather for your cake to rise. But instead of just saying baking powder, it's baking powder and then in parentheses, what goes into making baking powder? And I've seen people freak out about that and then go and make it themselves from scratch. It's like the canned stuff is just what you can make yourself and will have to mix yourself. You can do it all individually. You don't need baking powder. You just need the ingredients of making baking powder. So people get upset about the wrong things. Their attention is too easily grabbed by any influencer that gets on and starts talking about, you should have all this gelatin, eat collagen, eat this. And pests, oh my God, do you know how many inside worms you've got? You need to be taking a vermifuge. Yes, it's nasty, it'll make you sick as a dog, but you're getting rid of those worms, even though you can't prove it. When I was working in the health food industry, meaning I managed a little health food store in Southern California for an old woman who was quite adept at breaking rules. And I started learning about things. And I was, number one, I was genuinely shocked by a lot of what I learned and horrified by a lot of other things I learned. People who want to be healthy were definitely throwing away their money. See, when you sell natural stuff goes bad. When you buy like brown rice still has its germ. That germ has the oil, and the oils go rancid. So anything with an oil or the germ, yeah, it goes bad. That's why you have enriched flour, because in order to make that flour last long enough to be milled and turned into flour, they store that grain sometimes for over a year before it's milled. They have to make sure things don't hatch and things don't go rancid. So they don't do much about the hatching stuff. They can't control everything, but they can control rancidity to a degree, and that's remains removing the germ, the oily part where you get your vitamin E, for example. In wheat germ, that's the little thing they take out of the wheat. And people don't need to panic about these things. They just need to be aware of what they're eating. So do I eat whole wheat? Actually, I don't like whole wheat. It's always been too bitter for me. I don't bake with it. I bake with regular white wheat. And when I have the money and time, kamut, which is a golden wheat, and I love that stuff. But I have to grind it up myself. And you have to use that within a reasonable amount of purchase time because it's a whole grain and it will go rancid. Just because we found it originally in a pyramid and it was sproutable doesn't mean that the stuff in your grocery cabinet is going to be like that. So now I'm learning different sprouts to grow. And I started some this week. Mung beans, which I do anyway, just in a jar for putting into my ramen soups. Beet greens, which I've grown in soil, average soil. Lentils, which I've never sprouted for greens, and chickpeas, which I've also never sprouted for greens. Well, I will tell you right now, I think I've got the wrong setup for the chickpeas, because chickpeas put out a hell of a fat root, and they're not seeming to go down in through the holes toward the water. The mung beans, on the other hand, have gone overly enthusiastic, and I realize that as little as a dozen beans are going to be enough for this little space to start growing their greenery. So I'm learning which ones are doing what, which I can do. I'm hoping mostly for the beets. I love my little teeny beet microgreens. That and arugula. I have found great satisfaction in growing small amounts of them, but then every time I make a salad, just going to my little greens and snipping off a handful of my fresh greens over my salad. It's like, it looks really pretty, but it also tastes really good. Little teeny beet greens taste just like beets without you having to cut up a whole beet. So this is upside down. This is now quite drenched. So it's going to hold its shape much better. I like fluting the edges because I make the edges yellow to reflect more light. And I'm just going to put this away where I can't knock it over so it can dry. It will take about 24 hours. I have learned since I've moved into this apartment that it doesn't take very long for an artist to fill up their apartment with art. I have all my stuff up on the walls. Right now, because I've got no place to store all the purses that I'm making, I'm starting to hang them up on the walls as well. So I've got a hat, and then underneath it is hanging a purse. Not necessarily one that matches, but it's there. Oh, yes, let's let this dry. And my friends have been asking, so are you giving up painting? Are you giving up the other arts? So, no, I'm not. But at the moment, yes, I am. I promised some people in the building that I was going to throw an art party this summer. Well, the summer is underway, and I have not set a date for the art party because something way more serious came up for our building, where the owners are trying to shut down completely and forever our indoor trash system, which for 6 floors of people who are mostly disabled is a really bad thing. So I am hoping that they've already changed their minds and reconsidered and have come up with a more logical solution, which is to replace the trash compactor. But my distraction is I'm one of the people pretty much rallying the tenants so they understand what their rights are and the numbers to call if this is not resolved in our favor. So I've been busy with community stuff that's not artistic at all, other than being polite and giving everybody a chance to speak. Sometimes that's an art, depending on who opens their mouth. So actually that happened. I did call an emergency tenant meeting, and we had a pretty good turnout. We had one person, though, who kept interrupting. And I'm like, I was very patient because I want everybody to speak their mind and also share what their knowledge about the subject is. So we listened, and I still was like, all right, we'll delay our plans by 2 days, but I will be ready at the tenant meeting with the phone numbers that people will need to connect with help, and a script of what to say when they call and or write. So I'm trying to prepare the community to prevent us from being injured by the cheapness of this company. Now, one of the things about the thing that has to be replaced is they've known it would have to be replaced since they built the building, because they always have to be replaced, like every 10 to 20 years. And the building is 45 years old and they've never replaced it. So it's been limping along for quite a long time, using the skills of a maintenance man who should not be called into that kind of action. All right, let's see if this will work. That looks more like when you want to make a muffin shaped like a rose. All right, I've seen a way of doing this, but it's very extensive, and I wasn't so impressed with the results that I wanted to do it that way. Now, if I wet this, I could probably do better. So let's try that. I just happen to have some clean, fresh, soapy water on hand. Now remember, these are partial felts. They're basically felted, but they are meant to be able to take more felting so that I could cut it up and put it into another piece being felted. So let's see. The bed would be a little roll, right, with a center, and then as it's turning, the petals, yeah, that would be one petal. I wonder if I should cut them and then just keep wrapping around like it's clay. Let me try that. So let's get that little curled center. Then the petal starts coming off. And another petal starts. And that, aside from having a lot of soap in it now, that's actually cute. All right, so let's see what we can do with that. Because it's too fat at the bottom, we're going to do something else. Oops, sorry. I hate to keep doing that to you guys. All right, now let's take this part and make a second one. a little twisted middle. Start to pull it over. And then come back with another petal. Hit, stay. You must talk to your art. That's cute just as that is, without another petal. Okay. She reminds me of chanterelle mushrooms. They're so wonderful to come across in the wild. Orange and peachy color. And they smell like fruit. But they're beautiful to see. They're fruited. So if you don't know what a chanterelle is, look it up. It's worth looking at some pictures just because it's so cool and delicious. And the cool thing about chanterelles is you can find them in the wild. And once you know what a chanterelle is supposed to look like and smell like, you won't make any mistakes. And if you find them, you will have found a choice edible mushroom. Okay, so this is from that little bit of felt, like a little bouquet of roses, as it were. But I've got to wait for this to dry. And I'm going to have to decide how to treat it as far as the little leaves are concerned. And then we're going to try and turn this into a boutonniere thing, a hat pin. So there you are. Now, what is this? This was made from all the scraps I had sitting in here. Kind of got caught up with all these little leftovers. And then I threw some extra viscose on just because it does cool stuff to the felt. It's shiny. It shrinks, or actually it doesn't shrink because it doesn't shrink and the wool underneath it does. It gives you all of these cool textures and looks. When it went down, this was just like a swipe of a feather fan brush. But they all wrinkled up and became more like, lightning. Okay, so what's the project? I'm not in the mood to really make a whole bunch of these. I've made the one. It's like that's what we're going to deal with. Another one I did want to try is actually see. I love that real delicate stuff, but if I'm making little discs, it's not going to be much of that involved. Oh, you're not round all yet. Round you off. I'm putting you in the middle. Yeah, right. And very good. Make them even smaller. Can she do it? I used to love making miniature things. And I did it all the time because I made things to go inside chicken eggs, like little scenes inside chicken eggs. And there are not a lot of miniatures made at that scale, so I was pretty much on my own. But now that my eyes aren't what they were, it's not as much fun. And I'm really glad I'm no longer in the egg business because I couldn't keep up. All right, still too big. I guess I am a little sensitive to some wool. It makes my nose itch. All right, we have to go even smaller. So back to food, one of my favorite subjects. When you start seeing what you can do in your own kitchen, when you start seeing what you can make with your own hands, and you start seeing the difference, you'll notice a lot of other things in your life actually improve. Your health improves when you make your food from scratch. You have better resistance to things when you eat food that's made without being all processed. The more you know, the more you grow. Now, right now, there's a lot of people lying to Americans about the food situation because the people who are hurting us the most are also in control of the media. So you're not getting truth when you go to TV. Most of the time. You have to look a little deeper if you want accuracy. Sometimes a lot deeper. Because the search engines don't rely on fact. They rely on what's in the headlines, what's on the top of the list. That's the first place they go, social media posts. It doesn't mean it's accurate. Just think about the commercials you see on this channel alone. I have no control over them. I have tried to control some of them, but I still see straight up bullshit, and there's nothing I can do to control that other than report. And then the company does eliminate some things, but they pop right back up like trolls, it's the same thing. It's like trolling advertising. So it's up to us. It's always up to us to determine what is it we want. Convenience. Oh yeah, that's one of the biggest things. People are so spoiled, but also ignorant. They're being told they can't make things. It's too hard. And they make, the rich people make it more easy to invest in them than it is to invest in themselves. Meaning, they'll sell you a dress at Walmart that took somebody or a line 10 minutes to make at the expense of their own dignity. They're underpaid, and they can't usually even afford the very thing they just made. So that's a reality you're supporting when you are buying fast fashion. You're supporting poverty, not wealth, except for the people who control that whole market. But what if you don't use that? What if you learn to do things like this? Well, not tiny flowers, but to make your own clothes, make your own hats. There are places where you can learn all these things using the natural environment. These are things that are not going to be done by robots. Robots are the ones that they're training to do all the crappy things that we don't want in the world anyway, aside from vehicles to get around. There are people who are just going to be content buying a set of dishes. And then there's those who are going to want to make those dishes because it presents an artistic challenge and outlet. Like, yeah, I want to make that. I want to do that. There are people who grow food, not just because they know they need food, but because they enjoy working with the soil. They enjoy gardening. They enjoy the relationships with their plants or with their chickens or whatever they are farming and raising. So I believe that everybody here is creative. Everybody's got talents and abilities. They've just gotten really lazy about learning more about themselves. And so we are a very easily distracted species, which does make things a little bit more challenging for us in the long term, but we are getting things done. Now is a chance. While things are really expensive, now is your chance to see what you can do, not just for yourself What can you learn that you can pass on to others? How can you help be part of the change? No, you're not out here to change the world. You don't have to change the whole world. You just have to look around and see what makes you feel more part of it. There are different ways that you can find out for yourself. It's not about endless searching online or even any searching outside of yourself. When I started this dream, August 4th makes 19 years ago, it started with a question while I was stuck in bed healing from a fractured pelvis. How can I serve? In my terms, that was, how can I serve humanity? How can I serve God? Mind you, my vision of God is not quite what the religious people would like, but my communication is always ongoing. So I wanted to know from the bigger picture, what can I do? What can I do to help anything for anyone? Especially now that I'm stuck in bed on my back, unable to move. And I came up with the help people be less superstitious. Help them realize they're not cursed. Help them realize that they have value and they're worthy of happiness and success. And to me, that was my highest calling at the time. Now I know also to be most effective, you need to focus on where you are at in the moment, not where you hope to be in the future, but where are you? Emotionally, physically, what's your community? A lot of these communities contain people we don't want to be involved with, and for good reasons. But overall, when you look past people's idiosyncrasies and preferences, you do find that we're all the same. We're all related, and we all need support. There's always something going on. We need that help. So what do you enjoy doing? I've always enjoyed teaching. Learning things and then sharing them has always been my biggest turn on. Especially when what I was sharing was music that I was writing and singing. And performing was definitely my passion. But I performed because it felt so good to perform. And I shared because it felt so good to share, and there were people out there who wanted to hear it. But as time goes on, we have to do different things, you know. I got older. Different music comes forward every generation. I was hoping to put a dent in the psychic industries 19 years ago because I wanted people to learn how to consult themselves instead of spending a fortune to consult other people for things that they can't tell them. You can't be told by an outsider what to do with your life. You can't be told who your perfect match is. All of these things come from inside, always and only. the moment we turn to other people to tell us who we are, we've just made a big mistake. How can somebody else know us better than we know ourselves? Why would they? Now I think we'll use a little bit of yellow wool. I think we'll use that. All right, we definitely need to get more light yellow. I have red and black and gray coming. They should arrive by the end of the month. Okay, this is needle felting. This was what I was actually looking at before I discovered wet felting. And during the lookup is when I discovered wet felting. And went, forget the needles, give me that wet felting. Now, if you're just arriving and you don't know what wet felting is, this is pure wool. It's just carded and smoothed out. All fibers facing in the same direction and dyed wool, which obviously is a natural product because wool comes from sheep. When it comes to wet felting, it's the sheep stuff you want because it shrinks. It felts beautifully. But if you're needle felting, you can use a whole bunch of things. You can use anything you can get a needle to drag into your felt. This is, there's not much left on this little block that's useful, so I'm throwing it away soon. Wet felting is such a magical process, way more gentle than this process of stabbing things into creation. Wet felting uses soap and water and massaging into creation, and sometimes brutally rolling in a bamboo mat as if it were sushi. Okay. Yeah, working really, really small with felt is going to be a challenge because the more you play with it, the more the layers try to separate. So I think if I'm going to do this kind of thing, I'm going to have to felt it, the stuff way down, and make it kind of like where it can't shrink anymore. This is definitely a softer touch. So that would be, I did this as a prototype just to see. Make a teeny weeny 1 inch or so flower. Did we succeed with 1 inch? No, we went over. It is 1.5 inches, almost exactly. Maybe I will wait until I get those little hat pins to see what I'm working with. Because yeah, I don't want to go any smaller than that. It's cute to roll these up, but rolled up, you know, you end up with this extra, very chanterelle looking thing. Once it's dry, right now it's very dense. Once it's dry, should be able to cut the bottom off so it'll be flatter, and add a little green leaf. I've already felted the green leaf stuff back here, and this I did felt much more distinctly. And I don't think that when I start cutting this, it's going to start unraveling. I threw some silk in it too. Now that might be a problem, but for the leaf, it's not going to require that much manipulation. But this does. So let's go ahead and make that a little tighter. Keep our little miniature bouquet together. Okay. And this will probably take about 24 hours to dry too, because I soaked it so I could twist it up. The nice thing about the wool holds its shape really well after it's felted. The more you felt it, the more it's going to hold its shape. So those are cute. I'll put them in the center there. And little baby roses and a little bit of yellow that we don't need right now. I think we're just going to dispose of that now, because when I pick it up and need to use it, it just annoys me. Now I got a bunch of needles from China in different little kits, and they're embarrassing themselves with the fragility. I don't even know why they're giving them away other than they're crap. But there is a brand or two, or there are a brand or two that has some superior needles. And I say they're superior because I have used the crap out of them and they've not broken, whereas some of these other ones from China that go here, I have already broken like 2 this week. And I couldn't understand that when people were telling me that they went and they took a class. They said everybody was breaking needles. Those needles are breaking like crazy. I go, really? Wow, I had not broken a needle up to that point. I'd already made a whole bunch of projects with the same needle. That needle is this one. And it's just got some purple silicone for a little holder. I've used this so much that I've bent this over and it stayed in position. I had to kind of reform it. These have been working really well. So there are people who are making good and making garbage. So I'm not really sure how to tell the difference just by looking. Yeah, I really can't tell, especially because I've been using these. And if there was any tarnish, like these look a little bit darker, I've worn it off just through use. If you are a beginner, needle felter, I beg you to wear these little leather cots. You need these if you're a beginner. Now, when you get used to using your needles and you develop your own little rhythms and moves, you're generally much more cautious and less likely to stab yourself. But I did have a little slip, and I actually did stab myself right between the worst place on my nail I could possibly have hit. So it does happen even when you're accustomed to using these very, very sharp objects. All right. So I keep this. A friend of mine gave me these 3, and she wrote down what they were, the sizes, and then I looked up what those sizes are used for. Number 36, blue, and it's not universal code, by the way. There are 2 manufacturers that color code that I was able to find, and they're not matching. So always check with the manufacturer, see what your actual sizes are. So this is for making texture, meaning this leaves holes. It is a, from what I can tell, it's a triangular shaped needle. The green is when it's already getting firm and you want to make it even more firm. This is a workhorse. The yellow one is for doing fine details. It's a very fine needle. It too looks like a triangle. I've heard of them being in star patterns and triangle star pattern, something else that I don't have. So far, everything I have seems to be triangular in shape. And this one, this is the workhorse, like I said. You can see there is a very big difference in the size of it. I'm not counting covering it with plastic. This is a bigger needle. It works really well. And that's what we're going to use right now. To give this some more texture and ability to stand up a little bit more. Now I'll have to get it wet to give it the final shape. But in the meantime, I need to stab some extra wool on here and make it stand up better. So for that, I'm going to say probably yellow. Maybe doing something like this. And the yellow does go with this better than this. Yep, I think we're going to get some yellow out. Which yellow do I want to use? I think we'll go with the merino. As you can see, I got these supplies from Living Felt. Good company. I would do business with them on a regular basis, but unfortunately, they're in Texas, and the shipping of the wool to me is outrageous. There are two places in Texas I've done business with. Both of them are delights, but again, the shipping issue is insurmountable for a person on my kind of budget. Here's why I have located a local farm. I can't wait to visit. Okay, we have more than enough. Once you start felting it in, though, it disappears pretty fast. So let's see. Okay. Now, for those of you who think I'm teaching needle felting or wet felting, no, I'm not. I have done a lot of explaining for people who are interested, but I am what you might call an advanced beginner. I can teach you the very basics. That's it. Well, a little bit past the basics. I have made some nice stuff, but when it comes to three-dimensional objects, that's what I want to learn more about. My resists are very flat. I want to make sculptures which require learning how to make templates called book templates. And it is definitely a process and requires planning and measuring. Good at planning, not so good at measuring, but I would love to turn out some of the stuff like this artist in Russia and New Zealand do. They're just amazing women. Now what you're doing when you're needle felting is you're taking the fibers and shoving them through into more fibers where they lock. The only reason they can do that is because the needle is barbed. If the needle was just a straight needle, it would not work. So if you've been playing with the needle and hoping to do this and you're frustrated, that's why. You have to have the proper needle for felting because it's cut with barbs to catch onto the scaled wool. Wool has scales, like human hair. And it grabs them and locks them with more fibers that lock. Kind of like each poke is a stitch, as if you were sewing. But as you're doing this, you're also pushing more fiber in and shaping it, creating different texture. And if you're really aggressive, you will see it come out the other side, like hair. Typically, you go straight up and down, but I'm trying to make this curl. So I'm shoving the fur, the hair, in toward the center, which forces this to stand up a little bit more. And doing things on edge like this is not that easy. One of the ways I handle this also, so I don't stab my fingers, is using tweezers to keep it in place and also corral it to where I want it to go. Now, in the center of this top circle, aka flower petals, I tried using wool neps, which are really little hard, dense bits of the wool that form while wool is being not cleaned, but carded. So while the fibers are being corralled, some of them just kind of get knotted up, and those create these little balls of wool in whatever color your yarn happens to be. And they're being used in felting for texture. So I thought I would throw a bunch of them in the center of this to make, you know, a flower lumpy center kind of thing. Well, they don't like felting at all. And they're really difficult to needle felt because they're like little rocks, super dense wool. You can see where they're just sticking out here, where I tried felting them in and they just were not having it. I ended up pulling most of them off. Some of them remained stuck, so I just left them with the hopes that adding the processes like this would kind of corral them a little better. But I'm prepared for them all to fall off. Now, where I have successfully used the nips was in a couple of the lanterns I made. They stuck really well because I had enough wool over them to make them stick. And they look kind of cool with the light coming in from behind because they're opaque. So you get the extra texture. All right, come on now. Almost stabbed myself. Should probably put my glasses on. Look at that. The wool nips. Gonna have to do something to get around them because they're just annoying me now. They're so dense, you just really can't get a needle through them. Maybe I'll put some pink wool around the inside there. Magenta. Let's see. Now today I saw something from one of the senators' posts, and it had to do with the Great Lebowski or the Big Lebowski, something like that. The Dude. Now, I never saw the movie, and the clip included a bunch of clips from that movie. I still don't know what that movie was about. I recognized some great actors. It's like, no, I think the point was lost on me because I never saw the movie. Yeah, does not want to hold on to that. Don't get your petals in a twist. I took a workshop in needle felting this little flower. Came out good. I was slower than most people, though. I only finished one. We were supported in doing 3. So yeah, slow. But it came out nicely. But I didn't go there to make the flower, actually. I went there to see what the skill level was of the teacher and what I could learn in general as a felter, because I'd already succeeded in doing this flower. So doing a little folded calla lily was super simple. I liked how she worked with you wrap your yarn around a, oh, what do you call it? It's a pipe cleaner to make your stem, to make your yellow center, and then you wrap your flower around it. So I did bring one of these home. I got that far anyway. But I didn't see a need in making another calla lily, which I can definitely do a million times, but it just like, I'd rather do something a little more complex. What I did see, she didn't teach it, but the teacher had a flower which did more of this kind of thing, standing up, getting those petals up. Like, how do you do that? I said, aha, but she didn't teach us that. But after seeing the class and getting the idea about one of the needles, how it's used, it's like, I know what to do now. And I went home and finished putting this together. So we definitely teach ourselves through observing. Sometimes you have to observe the right thing. I wasn't picking that up online after I don't know how many videos I watched. But then that class, being able to see it close up, it's like, oh, the light went on. Okay, we definitely need some pink around that center. I don't like that. Do we want to go with the light? No, no. Light pink. You know, that might not be a bad idea. A little more contrast. can make it a little floofier too. Those nups again. Yeah, I won't be using those very much, except in wet felting. When I know they're going to be covered by wool that hold them in place. And I don't have to pass a needle through it. Yeah, let's take you right out. That's a no. Looks like a little red bug. It's just red wool. And it looks really soft until you feel it's more like a grain of rice. Oh, there it is. Let's get a little bone linter there. Now, a lot of people enjoy doing needle felting to make little animals and gnomes and things like that, and it is an adorable art. And there are some things that are so cute. Okay, yeah, I'd make that. And then I stop and go, wait a second. Once I make it, I have to either give it away or resign myself to tchotchkes that do nothing but really collect dust. And I don't want anything that isn't washable anymore or dustable. Growing up, that was the big thing. You bought all these little tchotchkes and decorated with tchotchkes. Everybody had a tchotchke collection if they were a grandmother. Oh, and they were big collectors, like Hummel figures. They're cute. They were sweet. As an artist, I could appreciate them. And as a collector, I found them boring. Because I wasn't really into kids. So if there was Hummel included a child, I was already bored. I like the ones that were doing things, like, crafts or action. The little action figures that weren't really doing anything. All right, well, that's a little better. I've got to do the rest of the petals. Do I want to? How long have I been on? 15 minutes till lunchtime, sweeties. Pink center. We need a little yellow. Teeny dot of yellow. Or a teeny dot of red. Just need a little teeny dot. I just have to go all the way through. Further sewing these 3 pieces together. We don't need all of that. There we go. Leave them a little fuzzy. too fluffy. There's a triple needle utensil for doing this. Actually, it helps it bunch up. But that triple needle is as wide as this piece, so I don't want to do an extra. I won't do this now. No. I get tired of needlework. I like the felting part. So we're going to put this away for now. We will continue our work on these flowers as we go along. Today is not the day. Okay, so one of the things that I have for felting is this. We're not going to use this today. This is going to be messed around with. I've got to comb it and get it into on order. This is hair. This was a very commonly used material if you didn't see my last broadcast. Because human hair is very strong and it's an obviously renewable resource. You cut it off, it grows back. So people used hair, but because it's so stiff, it's not pleasant against your skin. We used to use horsehair crinolines. People my age, girls my age know what those are. It was not necessarily something you really wanted to wear, but you were kind of pushed into it as a child. Here's a dress that won't do anything except hang over your crinoline. Yes, and happy Father's to you. Happy Father's Day to you, because you're a cat dad. I'm not a dad. Or a mom. Well, kind of a mom, but not really. Aloha. How's today going so far? I need my template. Yeah, that's only going to be the top part. I need to make another template to go with that. That's not today's work. That is not today's work. This is not today's work. That's gonna be. No, we can make that smaller too, can't we? I'll cut this to fit. No, wait, what is this? Oh, yeah, what do I do with that? We're gonna fix that. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, if he's not making you breakfast, just keep him distracted so you can. Nope. Hey, don't be rude. We're getting there. So, Maui, how does your garden grow today? God, this stuff is pain to work with. I think it'd be easy. It gives too much. That might work. We're gonna try it. I want to do something weird. Let's see. Oh yeah, I washed and hung the bubble wrap. I'll be right back. One of the things I have not done in the scheme of things is using the natural earth tones for a lantern, which is silly because a lot of people decorate with earth tones. And I'm going to make this easy on myself. I'm just going to cut this chunk off. We're not going to need more than that color. And I've got this. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Now this is very much like this other stuff I have. Let me see. A little warmer, I think. A little warmer. I don't want too much of it, but I've got a whole bunch of the heavier duty filler hanging up, which I do want to use before this, but this does not smell like the one I've got airing on my canvas. This is what I want. I want tons of wool. I want bunches. I want of every color. That. A big, big ball of wool. Why? Because it makes things. I can make things. I love making things. All right. Now, also in the earth tones. Oh, gorgeous. Chocolatey. Llama. We're not going to use for this, but we got beautiful chocolatey viscose. Rich cocoa. Here we've got an assortment of earthy colors. I would like to use these up. But I also have a bit of that. A bit of that. This is gorgeous. Corriedale. Definitely going to use some of that. Okay. A little more. Now I don't want too much dark because it'll block out the light. The whole purpose is to make a lantern lit from within. And you know what? Okay, I want to get a rosy color in here, so hold on a second. Up here. Yeah. I want it to be reminiscent of a desert sunrise. You're out there watching the sun come up and change your entire environment. Oh my God, look at that gorgeous stuff. Let's pick a little bit of that. Oh, if only could feel how soft this is. It is softer than any baby's blanket I've ever felt. All right, so let's see which browns. This kind of cocoa color goes well. Let's bring a little bit of it in. Now this is unknown. This came from China. I don't know what sheep they used. It is sheep. And it is beautiful. I just don't know what kind. Feels kind of like merino, just not the finest merino. All right, do we want a little of that? No. All right. Now, when my friend and I go to the farm, Lauren has access to fibers that come from all over the state. I can't wait. Oh, wait a second. Okay. Now, I'm sure I have excess wool here, but that's okay because we have a place. Hello, darling. Comfortably numbed for over a week now. Grandma is hungry and getting a headache. So Grandma is not going to be here more than a few more minutes. How are you, grandson, my darling? Was your conversation with Mr. Shiny wonderful, as expected? The last time I saw you was when you were getting ready for that convo. So, like, you know. Okay. Well, I'm okay. It sounds like you have a whole story to tell as I'm getting ready to go off and make myself food. Oh, okay, good. He's in the sea. Oh. Well, is there anything we can do to help? Oh, okay, I don't need you poofy right now. I need distinct strands like that. This stuff is amazing. To think that those long, hollow stems of bamboo can be turned into a lustrous, super soft fiber. Oh, well, there are some basic things you can do without having to go completely insane with changes. Eating better, absolutely important. No eat right, no function right. Brain needs carbs. Brain needs acetylcholine. Fish. Fish will help your brain. And if you want to feel less sluggish, start every meal, not counting breakfast, with a vegetable. Green leafies especially. Whatever greens you can get the greens in first, then the rest of your food. But the greens go in first to line your intestines and help prevent certain things from sticking. Aside from the nutrition they add to your life, they help you function better and clear out waste metabolites. Well, that'll make you sluggish, yes. That's a lot of focus. If you can't speak it and practice it, it's really just tedious memorization. Because you're a growing young man, and this is the time of your life when appetites get high, don't worry about the whys, dear. Don't waste your energy. Just focus on what you need to change to feel better. And then take one little step associated with something else you already do so it feels natural. It's like if you need to walk more, then start with walking the dog and then just go longer or more often. And don't overlook emotional eating. When we're not getting what we need emotionally, we tend to indulge in other ways. We feed ourselves one way or the other. Oh, this is gorgeous. Look at that. It's so fine. You want to know what glutton is? No, I've never actually been a glutton, but I did buy a chocolate cake this week. First cake I've bought like this in actually longer than I can remember. I think it was living in Pennsylvania the last time I bought this cake. And I had somebody to share it with. No, not this time. I got a dark chocolate fudge cake, which is 6 servings altogether. It was an indulgence because number one is a lot of sugar and generally more expensive than I want to spend on a cake somebody else bakes. I'd rather buy the ingredients and do it myself. But I went and I did it. And you know what? There's only 1 serving left. I've been eating mouthfuls of that chocolate cake before I eat my dinner. Now, today I did not eat it before breakfast, but I might take a bite before lunch. Now, I can make myself miserable and beat myself up for eating that chocolate cake, or I can just enjoy the hell out of it while I'm eating it and know that if I feel good about it, it's not going to hurt me. I don't have to get overexcited about it. Now, this being Corriedale has a great deal more structural integrity. This is good for making sculptures. It is heavy duty fibers. Look. Also very long fibers and super good at knotting things up. Yeah, so good. Hard to work with when you're just doing a few fibers at a time. They are knit. There are different ways to get done when you're procrastinating things. Sometimes procrastination is the smart thing. Like I'm really picky about my writing circumstances, but I know not to sit down to write unless I'm feeling inspired. Yes, it's work when you sit down, but you have to start off inspired. Then when the work part, like the editing and all that happens, you don't resent it. It's just part of the natural process of creation. I knew I'd have way more than I need of this, but my goodness, I have it for sure. Now this definitely has a shorter staple to it, which is okay with what I'm doing. But it's the kind of thing you want to know before you start a large project. Let's go back down here. Now, don't think I'm giving you an excuse to procrastinate. You are the only one who can evaluate what needs your attention first. And when you're honest with yourself, you get stuff done. Okay, now what we're seeing is going to be the inside of this. Yeah, we're going to have to cut you off, but not yet. This has a beautiful long staple. I'm just going to have a modest meal, no mayo, and no soda. Well, there you go. I very rarely use mayonnaise. I do keep tartar sauce around for the rare occasions I make a salad, like a chicken salad or an egg salad or a tuna salad. I don't use mayo. I don't use sour cream. I use tartar sauce because I like the pickles and the spice and all that. But what I most often use on my veg, and God, it's just so good, is a good balsamic vinegar. I use it on my salads. I use it on hot veg. And it's good for your digestion. And it does not have all the calories a fat-laden dressing has. Like, you will never find ranch dressing in my refrigerator, ever. If I want something even similar, I will look up the recipe and make it from scratch. It's not worth buying a bottle because if I used it for one thing, odds are I'm never going to use it again. I'm just going to throw it away. Heretofore, but not anymore. Oh. Now, I could wet everything down, but I'll forget what I was doing. So I'm, what did I do? Oh, there it is right in front of my face. I need to see my color arrangement in front of me. go. Okay, stay there. No, I gotta get this part done so I don't lose track of what I'm doing. When I go to eat, it's gonna take a while because I'm gonna cook myself something nice, and then I have a little chore to do for my neighbors to make sure that they're ready to defend our trash system on Wednesday. We got a notice, not individually, but hung up over our trash room doors. Now, we're in a building where there's 101 units, and trash is rather necessary to be taken care of. We have these trash chutes that are supposed to drop our trash into a compactor. Well, the compactor's been broken for over a decade. It's not been working right. And they got 40 years out of it, which is twice what it normally would get in a real world situation where people took care of things. Well, they're trying to close it down and make us responsible for bringing our trash out back to a dumpster. Now, if we were all young, able-bodied people, that would not be that big of a freak out. But the majority of people in this building are recovering from surgeries, from cancer. They're in wheelchairs, canes. You get the picture. Like a senior building without it being called a senior building. And they tried to sneak this through. We're having a meeting on Wednesday, but they're not thinking that more than a half a dozen or a dozen at the most are going to show up. They're about to be surprised. Because Auntie A has been busy letting people know the reality and what their recourse is legally. So I already gathered a bunch of tenants together and we had a secret tenant meeting. Now, nothing stays secret for long, and I wasn't planning on it being secret for long, but just long enough so we could get some people together so they would know what was happening. And we're ready. But I'm going to be having all the names of the organizations and their phone numbers and emails in one single page in Spanish, English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole, because of course they're using the language barriers as also a barrier of communications between people. So I've been translating things into Haitian Creole and showing our Haitian Creole neighbors what management is doing and why they need to be there for the meeting. So the management is not prepared, but we're going to have a surprisingly good turnout on Wednesday to make sure that we get it real straight about who's doing what. So you might say I've been very active this week, and right now that is my biggest concern, is making sure my neighbors and myself are safe. So here we have real winters in this neighborhood, and going outside represents a very big danger for a lot of us. So it's important to know your neighbors. Yes, Gloria received her gift. Of course, she loved it. I'm working on another one. Oh no, it's not just you, Maui. They're trying to basically, well, it turned out, so when I don't remember, well, you probably don't remember. I remember when I moved in here and I started talking to the managers and seeing what the things were going on. And I went to management immediately and I said, "Are you planning on selling this building?" "Oh, no, no." I said, "Really?" Because I've seen businesses get businesses ready to sell before, and you seem to be following that pattern. "No, no, we're not changing anything. We're not going to let go of this building." Well, it turned out they did put the building up for sale. Apparently, it did not go through. Now I think that they're trying to get ready for that kind of thing because they're making things look pretty outside and superficial stuff, so they can say, "But look, we're doing all these wonderful things for you. How can you not take care of this? We just need your help in taking out your own trash in the middle of winter." Well, it turns out making us do that is 100% illegal, and they didn't know that. Well, the owners know that, management knows that, the people who live here don't know that, but they know it now. You have to know what your rights are. You have to know. See, our building used to be designated as a disabled. Well, that's the first thing they get rid of when they want to start messing with your rights. They get rid of the status of it being for disabled people, even though the majority here are absolutely disabled. Did we get enough there? But people don't know their rights. They just go ahead and agree to anything, like the people in your building did, Maui. It's like, just go ahead and sign or you'll have to move. It's like, really? That might not be the case. It might be they're pulling a fast one because you don't know your rights. You could just go along with it. Well, because of what happened with your building, I was already anticipating some bullshit for ours because they all kind of follow the same playbook for getting rid of people and all that. So I double checked a few things. Like our place this May put in for rent increases. And when I say put it in, they asked HUD, which subsidizes our apartments here, for a very large increase. The good thing about that is, well, yes, our rent's going to go up a little bit, but the good thing about it is if they were planning on dumping this completely or making us responsible for our trash, they would have to leave HUD, but they can't do that without a 12-month warning, or they lose all HUD subsidies and they would have to start just renting out and fixing their properties to bring them up to what they're really charging. Because people like us, we don't make a big fuss about things not being perfect. We're grateful for having the space. We're grateful for the subsidy. We don't tend to get out there about our rights in making sure it's maintained properly. It's maintained to the bare minimum legally so that they can get what they want. Well, here's the problem. This building is 45 years old. It has a $20,000 unit that needs to be replaced ASAP. The building is fully packed right now. We don't have any vacancies at all. So it's very well funded for the moment. So I also looked into this. Well, what if they want to get rid of us? And it turns out that turning this building from HUD into regular apartments is not so easy, and it's definitely not cheap. In fact, it could take millions of dollars to change that because there'll be a lapse in funding. They want to get 101 apartments emptied so they can get full rent directly from a person. That's not a good deal for them. They're not going to want to do that. But a lot of people don't want to deal with HUD in terms of buying property, so that might be an issue. But like I said, I looked into it to see what kind of games they might be playing, and they can't sell the building as a non-HUD building or rent non-HUD. They can rent it non-HUD if you want to pay the full price, but when you see these little apartments that are 45 years old, you're not going to want to pay that full price. This is not New York City. This is a little town, and a little town with a lot of empty store fronts. It doesn't look good, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it's always about money. As somebody went out of her way to remind me, I said, of course it's about money. What else would it be about? It's not about charity. It's not about being kind or good to the people who rent. It's about making sure they make the maximum amount of profits with the least amount of expenditure. It's basic corporate business bullshit. It's not about the people. It's about their money. So according to AI, the AI suggests we don't wait at all. As soon as we got the announcement that they were going to shut down our trash chutes permanently, that was the day to act. And I've delayed it to make sure I got more people on board aware of what's going on. So it's going to be an interesting week. It's really ironic. And I wonder, we talk about energy and momentum, and it's really important to understand what your own momentum is, which goes all the way back to the time you were born. What are you keeping rolling without even being consciously aware of it? Well, I have to say that there was one thing, and you have heard about it. I was very proud of my father for sticking up for the tenants in his building, because the landlord was infamous for tenant abuse, property neglect. But, real fast to pull in the money and also real fast to evict anybody he could. The guy was a racist. The guy was a bad actor all across this state. And fighting him legally was a bitch. I don't even know if they ended up winning, but my father literally founded a tenants union to help them protect themselves from bad faith landlords. Of course, they tortured my father. They got even with him and made him especially miserable when he was very sick, because that's what they did. They were intimidation experts. My father stuck it out, though, and it all started with one woman having her toilet bowl fall through the floor into her kitchen, just hang there by its pipes. That's how bad the floors were. That's how they weren't taking care of the property. And that motivated my father to help defend these people, because my father happened to be a white man, and the people he was defending happened to be black people. And the real estate company was very much against anybody who wasn't white, but they didn't help the white people either. Don't get me wrong. They hated everybody equally, but they loved your money. So I thought when this came up, it said, I can't just sit here learning about stuff and then not letting people know about it, because I realized they were taking advantage of the language barriers, because we have a lot of people here who speak Haitian Creole and a lot of them who speak Spanish. So they put up one notice on each door of the trash chutes in English only. English only. We got photographs of them to show what they're doing. So the problem is that when they make a big change like that, they're supposed to inform everybody individually, like they do when there's going to be a meeting. But they didn't. And people already tore these things off the doors. So a lot of people are not aware of the changes they're trying to make happen. So I took it upon myself to inform a bunch of neighbors. And today I'm going to make sure that I have all of the stuff they need in 3 languages in a single page printout. So if the meeting does not say that they are replacing our trash compactor, and what they're going to do in the interim, if we have to wait for that, we're ready to make our phone calls the next day before I left Orlando. Yeah, see, they can't do that very easily because when you come into this building and you start seeing who lives here, you immediately get an impression that this is not a place for young people. And when you start to see how old certain things are, like the carpets and everything, okay, it's not a young building. The paint is layers thick on my walls. The wooden shelves are notched in places where they've built up paint over the damages instead of trying to repair them or replace them. So people who they want to court to take over these apartments are not going to be interested in taking over these apartments at full price. They're going to have to do a lot more changes if they expect people to fork over the amount of money they're asking. Exactly, Charlie. Yes, well, that happened in my mother's day during the 80s bubble. They were turning apartment buildings into condos, which meant you either moved or you had to come up with the cash to buy your apartment. They did that to my mother. My mother was living in an apartment building. They decided to go condo. And if you didn't have, I forget how much money, it was thousands of dollars, you had to put that big cash blob down to keep your apartment. And my mother, I think she decided to move. Well, she was a real estate broker by then, so she had access to lots of information and other places to move to. So, yeah, not everybody turned their stuff into condos, but that was a big rush. Now nobody wants those condos because the condo associations that have to rise to run the condos, like take care of, if you have a condominium, you have an apartment in a building, all right? It hasn't changed. It's still an apartment building. You still have landscaping. You still have someone who's got to deal with the trash. Well, a condo means you own that apartment, not the building. So every month, instead of rent, you're paying maintenance fees. If you have a pool, your fees are going toward maintaining the pool. Have mowing the lawn, taking care of the landscaping if you have any, taking care of the parking. All that stuff is supposed to come out of your condo monthly dues, which can frequently be bigger than the rent you were paying, and you have the ownership of the condo. Meaning, if you want to make a change, you have to make it out of your own pocket. If something breaks down, you have to pay for it out of your own pocket. So a lot of people started realizing that this is not such a great deal. After all, Art owned Sizzle Pants. All right, she owned an apartment, a condo. Well, what happens? The homeowner association that runs that, they were in charge of hiring the people to replace the rooftops, and they did a really bad job, and a bunch of those roofs leaked. And who did they have to turn to? Well, it turned out that there was not a paper trail. The person who did the rooftops, it was kind of like what our president is doing to the country right now, a non-bid contract. Somebody without a reputation came in, did them, and they couldn't find anything but a check had been written to this person who no longer existed. So lots of dirty things happen in the real estate world. And there were laws against it, but all those kinds of things to protect the consumers are being repealed by this administration to favor the corporations who own these monsters. So it's a weird case in our building because our building is owned by what started off as one man. One man built this place and he loved it and he paid attention to it. He partied with the people here. He used to come here to spend his Christmas and Thanksgiving, and he supplied the feast. Okay, that's the kind of owner built this place. But now he's in his 90s, and it's his son and another woman running it. Now, so they own this building and they manage it, but they also manage other properties that they don't own. So they're making money from managing other places that are way more exclusive than this. So they're making money. They're not like going broke or anything. But this trash stuff is an expected problem. It's expected to be replaced every 10 to 20 years. That's how long the compression units last on average. And they're still using their first one, which we know it's been dead for a long time. So I had to, as a basic human trying to live an honest, upright life, I had to let my neighbors know what's going on. Wouldn't you? So am I worried about the building being sold? No, because if they sell it, no one's going to no one's going to buy it without the understanding that the income's already guaranteed by HUD. And if they do that, they have to follow the same laws and rules that every other building is supposed to follow under HUD rules. So I'm not worried about that. I am concerned about my neighbors and myself having to try and drag out garbage to somewhere else on the property in winter. Well, in this case, that's exactly what's happened. The son of this person is not a good man when it comes to, well, they shut down as much as they could. They took back as much as they could. They stopped doing now the Christmas party is a sheet cake and a couple pans of gross cold catered things. It's like, I don't want a piece of cake and I don't want any of that food. I'm eating before I come down. Yep. Yes. Yes, and they take care of things, but the kids only see the money value. They don't see the service that she is providing for other young people to get a start in life. They see it as money. Let's charge more. Let's ask more. But this is going to change, Carlos. It's going to change because, at least in this country, we're pricing ourselves out of existence. We can't keep up with it. People can't afford anything anymore. Exactly. But it's inevitable. These people, if they get too greedy, they put themselves out of business. Your heart has to be in it. And that's why I always recommend that you check yourself. What is it you want to do? When you're a young person, it's really important to find out what you like to do. Because if you like it, you're going to be more motivated to do it. If you hate it, you're going to give yourself an ulcer going to work every day to a job you despise, and then you start despising yourself for not standing up for yourself more strongly and making sure you ended up in something you could dig. It's really, it comes down to that. Some of us are not really made for working for other people. We need to be independent. We need to make our own rules and live by our own moral standards. A lot of us have higher morals than the people who are running our companies. So I can't work for people like that. So I have, rather than work for a lot of those people, I just took the poorer road. I didn't make as much money, but I definitely had a lot of happiness and joy in doing what I did. I would not change it. At this point, I might try to make a larger, whatever I was doing, I'd try to expand it so people could get additional work doing creative stuff. But I would not want to, I can't turn myself into a corporate tool. And I don't ever see myself, like my sister worked for Wall Street for a while. She had a college degree in art, but also in CAD, computer assisted drawing. Very, very bright woman, my sister. And she's done very well for herself financially. But when she was on Wall Street, yeah, she was making good living. Um, but she hated it. She really learned to despise Wall Street and couldn't wait to leave. And she felt a lot better when she left. Okay, I will also dine modestly. I'll see you later on this afternoon after I take care of my paperwork for the community. I'll be back to make this into something that's usable.